Hello, readers. Our next book of the day is Otis and the Kittens, written by Lauren Long. Oh, isn't that just adorable? For the brave who run toward danger instead of away. Otis and the Kittens. Readers, what do you notice? Are there any clues? Are there clues from the patterns of the other Otis stories? Think about the other stories we've read and think about the story mountain. By looking at the clues and the words of wisdom here by the author before the story starts, what are you thinking? What do you think might be a pattern in this story? So turn and talk to your partner a minute. Make a prediction of what you think might happen in the story before we read it. But don't forget, think about the pattern. Otis and the Kittens. And wow, readers, look at this page. What a wonderful page. Talk about the setting. What do you notice? Is there differences? Is there similarities to the setting in the other Otis stories? Talk about that as well. It was hot and dry on the farm where the friendly little tractor named Otis lived. Otis couldn't remember the last time it had rained. Farmers all over the valley grew more anxious by the day. Water was in short supply, the ground was hard, and the corn stalks were half as tall as they should have been. Otis spent his afternoons out in the sweltering fields with the farm hands baling straw. Once the load was full, with a puff and a chuff, Otis would pull the wagon into the old barn down by the bend at Mud Creek. The farm hands would use a pulley to lift each bale up into the loft, where it would be stored for the long winter to come. When the sun had gone over the hill and work was done, Otis was ready to sit in the shade and rest. But not Otis's friend the bull. Why not? What do you think? The bull liked to stand in front of Otis and snort and snarl and huff hot air. Two snorts, a snarl, and a huff. All the animals knew what that meant. The bull was challenging Otis to a tug of war. Otis smiled. His friends were always eager to play, even after a long day of work. Once Duck wound the end of a rope around the bull's horns, another duck looped the other end around Otis's steering wheel. The animals then took sides, grabbing on any way they could. Everyone pulled and tugged with all of their might. Eventually, Otis would ease up a little. He didn't care much about winning. He just liked having fun with his friends. What's that teach you about Otis? One afternoon, when everyone was up under the shade of the apple tree, Otis spotted something moving down in the field. It looked to be an orange tabby cat. Where did she come from? Otis wondered. He watched as she ran toward the old barn, and there he saw something that caused his engine to sputter. A swirl of smoke. Look at all their faces of alarm. Oh no, what do you think, readers? What's that smoke? Otis raced to the barn with the animals following behind. They discovered Flames coming from the loft inside the old barn. A fire! The barn was filled with brittle, dry straw, and Otis knew it wouldn't take long for it all to burst into flames. Just then, the tabby cat appeared in the barn window. With a put, puff, puttity chuff, Otis rushed into the burning barn. Look at these choices and reactions Otis is making. What's it teach us about him? How many seconds did it take him to decide? What'd he do? What's it teach you about his personality, readers? Let's see what happens. Inside, the flames were growing and smoke was forming a dark cloud. The cat was pacing back and forth, high above on a rafter. Otis chuffed for her to jump down, but the cat wouldn't budge. Instead, she stared down at Otis and belted out the loudest meow Otis had ever heard. What was she trying to tell him? Turn and talk, readers. Why is the cat running into the flames instead of out of the flames? And now, almost is stuck or refusing to leave. Turn and talk. Why do you think she's doing that? Let's find out. Suddenly, Otis heard a tiny meow from the hayloft, and then another tiny meow, and another meow, 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 and another meow. At once, 5 furry little heads popped up and stared down at him. Kittens! As flames blazed overhead, Otis stood on hind wheels and stretched to the edge of the loft. To a chorus of tiny meow, 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 the kittens hopped down. The farm animals cheered as Otis emerged from the burning barn with kittens all over him. So to a chorus of tiny meow meows, one by one, the kittens hopped down, and the farm animals were there, eager, as Otis emerged from the burning barn with kittens all over him, and there's the mama. But as soon as Mama Cat counted their little heads, she meow, 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 meowed frantically back at the barn. This time, Otis had no doubt what she was saying. How many more were still in there? He wondered. By then, the top of the barn was engulfed in flames, sending large plumes of smoke into the sky. Otis was afraid, but he gunned his engine, screeched his tires, and dashed back into the burning barn. There's another big action to teach you about our character. Inside, the heat was growing worse and it was hard to breathe. Otis revved his engine, and one last little sorry, readers. I don't know why my computer just decided to cut us off on that. What a really suspenseful moment for poof! My computer just to shut down on us. I am very sorry for that. So let's continue. I'll back up to this page since it cut us off a little bit. But as soon as Mama Cat counted their little heads, she meowed frantically back at the barn. Now remember, think of that story mountain as the actions rise and rise, and we get to that most suspenseful part of the problem. This time, Otis had no doubt what she was saying. How many more were still in there, he wondered. By then, the top of the barn was engulfed in flames, sending large plumes of smoke into the sky. Otis was afraid, but he gunned his engine, screeched his tires, and dashed back into the burning barn. Again, what's that teach us about Otis? Inside, the heat was growing worse, and it was hard to breathe. Otis revved his engine, and one last little head popped up, trembling. Oh my goodness, trembling from fear. Otis puffed a gentle chuff, and the kitten climbed down on top of him, hopped to his seat, leapt to the floor, and scampered out of the barn to safety. Aw. Outside, the animals cheered when they saw another kitten emerge, and they watched for Otis to follow. Inside, the flames spread by the second. Otis wheeled around to see if any more kittens were left. The old boards of the barn's floor creaked, buckled, and moaned. The walls popped. He couldn't wait another second. Just as Otis spotted the exit and raced his wheels to leave, there was a giant crash. Oh no. The floor. The floor collapsed, and Otis plunged to the darkness below. Oh no, Otis. Outside, the animals held their breath, waiting for their friend to emerge. Inside, Otis couldn't move. He had fallen into the clutter, lower level of the old barn, and he was covered in dust, debris, and broken planks. Stuck in the hole with the fire raging above, Otis could hardly puff a breath. Then he heard the siren of Fire Chief Douglas and the fire engine. The farmer pulled up, and Otis heard him rounding up the animals. Help had arrived. He knew he'd be fine until he heard Fire Chief Douglas holler. "Sorry, farmer. The creek's gone dry in the drought, and the water supply's too low to save this old barn. As long as everyone's safe, we'll have to let her burn." Underneath the pile of broken boards and dust, Otis couldn't see a thing or move a gasket, and his heart sank deep inside his engine. Oh no. The animals had grown wild with fear. The farmer counted them one by one. They were all safe and sound. He couldn't figure out why they were acting so crazy. Suddenly, the little calf bolted for the barn door. Her friends followed right behind. Inside the fiery barn, they spotted Otis stuck down in the hole, covered in boards and dust. His engine was barely running. How could they ever get him out? What do you think, readers? What do you think might happen? The bull looked up at the rafters and down at Otis. He stood in front of the hole in the floor and snorted and snarled and huffed hot air. 2 snorts, a snarl, and a huff. The animals knew just what that meant. One duck grabbed the pulley rope and wound it around the bull's horns. Another duck flew into the hole and hooked it to Otis's steering wheel. The bull snorted and tugged and snarled and pulled, but Otis didn't budge. Now what? The horse and the cow grabbed the rope behind the bull, and together they snorted and tugged and neighed and mooed and pulled, and Otis teetered ever so slightly. The little calf jumped in place, or jumped in, and tugged and bawled and pulled, and Otis raised a bit more. The puppy grabbed the rope behind the little calf, and with a fierce "Urgh!" tugged and pulled and growled as Otis inched upward. And then came a piercing meow and the sound of Fire Chief Douglas shouting, "Holy moly! Otis is in there! Hold on tight, everyone! I'm here to help!" Fire Chief Douglas grabbed the end of the rope and tugged and pulled and tugged. All together, the animals and Fire Chief Douglas lifted Otis higher and higher until he was suspended above the hole. The ducks swooped in and pushed him over the edge of the opening to where they could lower him to the floor. Together, everyone pulled the dust and ash-covered tractor out from the burning fire, just as parts of the barn began to fall. Then Fire Chief Douglas and his men hosed off Otis and wiped down his frame. The cool water revived Otis, and everyone cheered when they heard a faint put, puff, puttity, chuff. It was music to their ears. The kittens jumped up on top of Otis and crawled all over him. Fire Chief Douglas laughed and said, "Farmer, what say we adopt these kittens and their mama? They'd make a mighty fine addition to our firehouse family." Otis puffed a happy chuff. He couldn't think of a better home for his new friends. The end. Think, readers, how it ended, and think about how the story started, which is on the very front cover. What did you notice? How does it end? What was on the cover? And what about the words of wisdom? For the brave who run toward danger instead of away. Why did you choose those words? What's all that connect to?